Today's episode is sponsored by Midwest Fire. For more than 20 years, Midwest Fire has been manufacturing high-quality tankers, tanker pumpers, and fire rescue vehicles in the United States and Canada. Keeping firefighters safe while enhancing their capabilities is what they do best. To learn more, go to MidwestFire.com.
Everybody look at your hand. This is Firefighter Lionel Crowder from the Winnipeg Fire Department, and you're listening to Dr. Richard Gasaway on SA Matters Radio. The SA Matters mission is simple. We want to help us see the bad things coming in time to avoid bad outcomes.
Hello and welcome to episode 37 of the Situational Awareness Matters radio show. I'm your host, Rich Gasaway. The purpose of this show is to improve situational awareness and decision-making for individuals and teams who work in high-risk, high-consequence environments. The SA Matters mission is simple, to help you see the bad things coming in time to avoid bad outcomes. I'm coming to you today from, wait for it, my house. I'm home in Minnesota. Yes, home for the holidays. Well, actually home following the holidays. We spent Christmas in West Virginia at Grandma's house, and it was a great Christmas for us. The entire family was together to celebrate the season. And then on the Sunday following Christmas, I delivered a one-day situational awareness program for the Brighton Township Fire Department in Beaver County, Pennsylvania. I joked in last week's episode that there would either be no one at the program because they were spending time with their relatives, or the room would be packed because everyone wanted to get away from their relatives. And sure enough, the latter was the case. We had a packed house, thanks to Brighton Township for hosting and for providing lunch for all of the attendees, which was outstanding as well. It was a great day of learning and having fun. Okay, I'm recruiting new members for the SA Matters community of learners. Joining is free, and there are over 5,000 members sharing ideas on how to improve situational awareness and make better decisions under stress. If you're interested in joining the SA Matters community, you can go to samatters.com and click on the red box on the right side of the homepage that says SA Matters Membership. I've added an enticement to get new members to join the community of learners. So there are a couple good reasons you'll want to sign up. First reason, it's free. I mean, who doesn't like free, really, So the second reason is you get a special report, free. Hey, who doesn't like a free special report, right, that I created called 25 Best Practices for Improving First Responder Safety. Third, you get a monthly newsletter for free. Are you seeing a theme here? Free? Yeah, so the monthly newsletter gives us a chance to stay in contact with each other and share some special content that I create just for the members. And fourth, in celebration of the 3-year anniversary of SA Matters, I'm going to be sending out some free, get the theme, free video mini courses that'll focus on how the brain learns and how we're training first responders to fail. And I'll share some best practices in those videos for how to fix the problems. So if you are a member or if you join, you may want to make sure that support@richgasaway.com is on your safe sender list. Otherwise, the emails with the video link might get sent to your junk mail folder. And based on the live programs that I've done on this topic, I think these are videos that you're going to want to watch and perhaps share with others. So be watching your inbox, and they'll be coming soon. If you're not a member, you can head over to the website and sign up today. It's completely free, and you'll receive the monthly newsletter that addresses situational awareness issues. I'd like to take a moment to thank those who hosted recent Situational Awareness Matters live events. These events couldn't be possible without the commitment and support from our program hosts. So most recently, I was at the Brighton Township Fire Department, and thanks to Gary Gordon, who attended one of my programs earlier in the year for arranging the program in Brighton Township. And January 14th, I will be in Maple Grove, Minnesota. January 16th, Arvada, Colorado, where they're doing a joint program with Arvada and Westminster. January 20th in Castle Rock, Colorado. January 23rd in St. Cloud, Minnesota for the Minnesota Rural Electric Association conference. January 26th and 27th at Firehouse World, where I'll be presenting 2 programs in San Diego. And then January 31st, I'm doing a program for the Wisconsin Indian Head Technical College in River Falls, Wisconsin. The list of program dates and venues are located on the SA Matters website. You can click on the Programs and Keynotes tab and then the Event Schedule tab. Check back there often because I update it frequently as new programs are added. Here's hoping you'll be able to attend a program near you and we can meet up. If you're interested in hosting a program for your department or your association, just click on the Contact Us tab on the SA Matters homepage. This week's guest is Dr. Charles Chad Weinstein. He's the founder and president of Ethical Leaders in Action, a firm that exists to empower ethical leaders to achieve extraordinary results. He works primarily with leaders in public safety, healthcare, and business organizations. Dr. Weinstein recently authored a book, Thinking Aloud, Reflections on Ethical Leadership. During the interview, we discussed how Dr. Weinstein's 3 guiding principles of ethical leadership help organizations achieve extraordinary results, those being excellence in service, sound stewardship, and fairness. We also talked about how Dr. Weinstein's work with fire departments has been instrumental in helping them identify opportunities to achieve excellence in their leadership. And then we talk about his new book, which is a collection of essays that can be used to inspire conversations about leadership best practices in fire departments. And then finally, we talk about the connection of safety, culture, and ethical leadership. So let's jump right into our interview with Dr. Chad Weinstein. Well, I'm very excited today to have as my guest Dr. Chad Weinstein. Chad and I have been friends for a long time and professional associates for a very long time as well. And Chad is the author of a recently released book called Thinking Aloud, Reflections on Ethical Leadership. And he's also the president and the founder of a company called Ethical Leaders in Action. Chad, thanks for being with me today.
Rich, thank you. It's a pleasure and an honor, and I have to say you're a great friend, but I'm also a fan. I really admire your work.
Well, and I yours. So we have the mutual fan club thing going on here. What brings us together is a couple of points that I want to talk about with you for the benefit of my audience, and one of them is the work that you do with fire departments. Now, let's just do the disclosure right up front. Chad Weinstein is not a firefighter, right?
That's absolutely right.
All right, but that doesn't mean that you don't know the fire business. So give us a little walk down history lane and tell us about how you got to where you are today with the things that you're doing. Because it didn't start with the fire service, but it's heavily involved with the fire service now.
I frankly feel like the luckiest man in show business because of just that. I get to spend my days working largely in the fire service, and I certainly didn't expect that would be the case until a few years ago. I graduated with an education in philosophy. In fact, I trained to be a philosophy professor, and at the same time spent about 25 years as a management consultant working mostly with big companies, mostly helping them to make decisions sort of at the intersection between marketing and technology. This was very interesting work, but it wasn't especially satisfying. The world was not a better place because of the work that I did. As a scholar of ethics, I studied how we can understand morality, what makes right actions right and wrong actions wrong, and how we can make the best choices really to orient our lives. And the way those two sets of experiences fit together is this. There's already a lot of ethics in the workplace, including among public employees. Many cities and counties have mandatory ethics training for their fire officers and often for their firefighters. But that ethics training is about not doing bad things. Mm-hmm. It's about preventing wrongdoing. Mm-hmm. And you know what? That's not what ethics is. If they taught firefighting the way that we teach ethics, you would do nothing but surround and drown. You would save basements and carry out very sick people. You wouldn't take risks, and you wouldn't do your best, and you wouldn't protect and serve. You would protect yourselves. That's how we think about ethics. Just don't be bad. Well, ethics isn't just about not being bad. It's about being our best. So about 10 years ago, I began trying, and about 7 years ago, I began working full-time on an ethics center and organization that helps leaders to operationalize a positive perspective on ethics. In other words, ethics is not about avoiding wrongdoing, but truly about being our best. And about 7 years ago, I was frankly talking to anyone who would listen. And among those people were Rotarians. I spoke at a lot of Rotary clubs, and I was looking for business leaders who could see the alignment between doing good and doing well. And I found some of them. But I also found fire chiefs and some police chiefs as well, and sheriffs, who tend to be Rotarians. And among those fire chiefs, I heard them ask, do you work with our agencies? Because we struggle with leadership issues that align with or relate to the things you're talking about. And at first, when your business is called Ethical Leaders in Action, as tempting as I am to sell, I had to say, no, I don't know anything about the fire service. But let's be realistic. I was once an 8-year-old boy. I wanted to be a firefighter like everyone else. And so, hearing that enough, I did a little research. And when a fire chief in Eden Prairie, Minnesota, named George Esbenson came up to me at his Rotary Club, my answer wasn't no. It was, well, will you teach me about the fire service? And let's see how we can apply what I'm doing in the private sector to this remarkable world. And other chiefs have joined me, including you, Rich, as my teachers and mentors and colleagues and peers. And I continue to learn about your world and to apply what we know about ethical leadership to this really mission-critical environment.
Now, I've had some opportunities to teach one-day leadership classes. I have a program that I call Leaders Toolbox, and basically I come in for one day and kind of do some principle type training on some soft skills, conflict resolution, problem solving, communications, but it's pretty much a one day touch. And along the way I have had the opportunity to see a number of agencies who have issues that are more complex or more challenging than really what a one-day class will be able to solve. And in fact, I think my one-day class just brings to the surface some of the challenges that are deeper challenges for them. And as a result of that, I've had the chance to then refer you to those organizations. And let's talk a little bit about what you do when I refer an organization to you, because you do much more than the one-day class, which is the thing that I do. So I hand an organization off to you, and what can they expect?
It's a great question. Your class is extremely powerful for giving motivated leaders ways to channel that motivation into effective techniques that allow them to engage others and to lead more effectively. Your class is also pretty effective for some people who are disengaged. They can get re-fired up by spending a day with you. I've seen it happen. And there's that whole vast gulf of people in the middle who are curious enough to show up, or maybe they get directed to show up, and they're on the fence about whether they should invest in leadership. They'd much rather read about the pros and cons of a quint versus a small aerial than think about how can I get the crew better trained to operate whatever their apparatus is more effectively, or how can I motivate those people who are sitting in the back throwing grenades instead of supporting their brothers and sisters. And so I've seen your class work for all three of those people. The fired up, where they learn skills and techniques, the actively disengaged, where they get a little of their fire back, and the people in the middle who start to think, yeah, I want that. Where I come in is when they get back to their firehouse, they have these skills, they have this interest, but the whole department may still have some issues that will keep them from being their best. And to address those issues, it takes more than a class, even the best. It takes a period of time where this group of leaders works together, where there is an opportunity to learn and apply leadership skills and some outside accountability to assure that the changes that we talk about really take place and they really stick. And so the first thing I do when you connect me with someone who's interested is to find out, first of all, what they see might be wrong, but also what's their positive vision? What do they want their department to be like? Then we talk about what's the delta between where they are and where they want to be. And then we talk about a plan to work with the core of leaders in the department. Often it's the chief officers and the company officers separately so that everyone has a chance to talk freely and openly. And then we bring them together. We may spend 3, 6, or 12 months together, monthly or quarterly. And I may work with small groups and individuals as well as larger groups, all to help that agency, first of all, learn a common language and set of leadership techniques. Second, to address the real problems that are going on. Those may be individuals, they may be groups, they may be just bad habits that we have to work on. There may be some healing that needs to take place. So we gotta get everyone pointed in the same direction, address the problems of the past, and then as quickly as we can, move from the past into the present and then into the future. And so we work to apply the skills, techniques, language of leadership to their department in their environment and come back until they are really living their expectations and their aspirations.
Yeah. Good summation of it. You know, as I was thinking about, as you were describing it and thinking about what I do, I had this analogy pop into my head about an auto mechanic. And sometimes when you take your car into the shop because it isn't running right, it just really needs a minor tune-up or a minor adjustment, and that's kind of the things that I do. And sometimes you need an overhaul, and that's kind of what you do, is work with them over time, bringing accountability to the leadership of the organization, and not only in getting them dialed in, but making sure that they're actually making progress in the direction that they want the organization to go.
I think that's a great analogy.
Yeah.
I also would say for that longer term work, it isn't necessarily just fixing what's broken. It may be supercharging what's already pretty good. People come in, chiefs will hire me not because they think their department's broken, but they say, look, I've got 5 years before I retire and I want to make sure that my leadership team, my command staff is finely tuned and ready for me to walk out the door. Or they say, I want to make my department something really special. We're doing fine, but I want us to be something that all of us can be really, really proud of. And that, like fixing things that are more broken, that takes time too. And it does take that intensive commitment over time to really become great at pursuing a mission.
Is it fair, Chad, that when you go into these organizations that you see leaders who want an organization, if it's broke, to be fixed, or if it's good, to be better, that they truly have a passion for wanting it to go to another level, but maybe they just don't know how to get there? In other words, maybe they're in Minnesota and they want to get to California and they need a map on how to navigate to where they want to be. Is that fair as to how you see things?
That's a very fair description. Or some people think they want to be in California, but after we've had some conversation, Portland, Oregon may be a better fit. And so we talk about that too. One of the funny benefits of not being of the fire service directly, I have to speak the language like a native and I have to really understand what's going on, but I don't have to get involved in operational decision making. My work involves what happens primarily back at the firehouse, whereas your work is most successful when the rubber meets the road on the fire ground. Mm-hmm. Both are critically important. And back at the firehouse, sometimes it is a matter of working with that leadership team to say, what is your vision and why does it matter? I work with 3 interlocking values. I believe that a great first responder agency needs to drive excellent public service, sound stewardship of public resources, and fairness. And so as we talk about the vision that a chief or a command staff has for their agency, I'll ask those questions. How does that allow you to deliver better service to the public? Or how do we know that you're giving your community what they need, that you're aligned with other agencies to deliver optimal services? Or are we thinking enough about doing this work in a way that's appropriately cost effective? And finally, are we being fair to everyone involved? And so that provides a framework sometimes for sharpening people's vision and helping them develop the map to go where they want to go.
Mm-hmm. And since the theme of the podcast is about firefighter safety, let's talk about how what you do segues into making a safer firefighter or a culture of safety within the fire department. How does it? I mean, I guess it'd be easy for people to see, on the administrative side how important leadership and ethical leadership is. But how does this segue to the things that are the concerns of safety? As you say, where the rubber meets the road on the fire ground. How does this leadership then become part of that leadership?
Oh, that's a great question. Effective leadership is a critical means of creating a safe organization, or rather to empowering firefighters and officers at all ranks to operate safely consistently. First of all, the leaders need to understand and have a great deal of knowledge about safety, the kind of things that you provide. That's understanding risks, both obvious and less than obvious, but it's also understanding the options available for mitigating those risks. What are the best techniques? What is the best equipment? What are the best strategies involved? And so the first role of leaders in creating a safe agency is you got to become expert and know who the experts are so that you have an informed point of view. Then you need to both motivate and equip personnel at all levels to operate in accordance with the best practices based on your enlightened understanding of the risks that you're taking. Remember, I talked about those 3 values: excellent public service, sound stewardship of resources, and fairness. Well, safety is a critical component of fairness. Your people have to take risks in order to do their job. There's no question about that. But we have to, at the same time, constantly, zealously look for ways to mitigate that risk without infringing on your ability to deliver excellent public service. In other words, to solve the problems that you've been called to solve to the best of your ability. So the first job is to remember that safety is integral to everything that you do, and to be expert at teaching and training and insisting on the best practices related to that safety. You can only do that, finally, if you are a leader who has earned the respect of your personnel and who has consistently supported, trained, and held them accountable to the right practices. You can know all the right things in the world, but leadership is the means by which you translate what you know into what your personnel do in those moments of truth over and over and over again. That doesn't happen after the call and before the all clear. That happens day to day, day in and day out at the firehouse and on the incident ground.
Chad, sometimes, more than sometimes, I'd say often enough that I can say often, that I talk with frustrated firefighters and company officers who they've drank the Kool-Aid. They get it. They understand the need for safety and safe practices, and how their focus is now on making sure that they go home. But as it goes up the chain of command, there is not that zealousness for safety. There is I think a cadre of frustrated firefighters and company officers who hit a ceiling as they're trying to advance ideas up the organization. Have you seen this, and what advice would you give to these officers about how to try to manage upward the need to change a culture or the need for greater accountability?
It's a great question. It's the responsibility of leaders at all levels to participate in decision making and to try to influence the people above them to make the right decisions. That's part of being a good follower, a good subordinate, is to support and inform your superiors and participate in decision making as best you can. And at the same time, there comes a time when you have to follow orders. When the decision is made, one of my chiefs talks about the leadership door. So when you're behind the leadership door, you talk candidly and openly. And when you walk back out through that door into the rest of the department, you've all got to talk with one voice. So the first thing that's very tempting is to hang around the day room or the parking lot and to grouse about how unsafe this is. And I have to say that is the worst strategy available. What is more effective is, first of all, get educated. Use your resources, frankly, and the other resources that are available to develop a well-informed, fact-based, modern, up-to-date point of view about what you think ought to be done. Develop a clear vision of how what you believe, first of all, is really true, and second, why it matters. And as you can articulate why what you believe matters and why it's true and how it's fact-based, then start to make that case to your superior officers. Use the chain of command, engage with them as appropriate, and continue to advance your point of view in a way that isn't accusatory, that is constructive, that is helpful, that enables them to be their best so that they can help the rest of the department to advance. So rather than get frustrated and take it to the street, get educated, get engaged, and even if it's frustrating from time to time, stay engaged in the leadership conversation about that safety point of view.
You work primarily with leaders in public safety, healthcare, and business organizations. You live outside of St. Paul, as I do, with your wife Kathy and your 3 kids, and it says you do some of your best thinking aloud while sailing on White Bear Lake on your sailboat, which I have had the pleasure and honor of sailing with you a couple of times on White Bear Lake, and I had joked with you that if our brains got heavier as the conversation weared on, we'd probably sink the sailboat because of how much knowledge we have shared and how inspired I've been by the conversations that we've had while we're sailing. Obviously, you have a great passion for your sailboat and for sailing as well, and that's been a lot of fun. But about the book, what would this book do for first response, fire departments, police departments? Why would they be inspired to want to buy Thinking Aloud?
Well, first of all, thank you. I have enjoyed our sales every bit as much as you say, and it's a great pleasure. I can't wait for spring when we can get back out there again. But in the meantime, the book makes good reading in the winter too. It's short essays. The book is a collection of reflections on practical aspects of ethical leadership. So the essays are 1 to 3 pages. They are organized in accordance with some themes in the public sector, in teams, and in your workplace. some personal reflections in a section called On Living Like a Grown-Up, and a section that's really about the core ideas of ethical leadership that I teach. So one of the things that readers have said they like is they literally can thumb through it, open up to any page, and they're within 1 or 2 pages of a new essay, and they can have that essay read in 5 to 10 minutes. And following the essay, they've got 3 questions that they can consider. So this book works if you want to read it alone. It also works if you want to give it to your leadership team, or if you're a lieutenant or captain and you want to buy copies for your squad and have a few minutes to just reflect as a squad at the beginning of the shift, or on a monthly basis. One of the funniest things a firefighter said to me was, "Your book's great. It fits on the back of my John, and that's just where I'm reading it."
We're never shy about being brutally honest.
That's exactly right. I like it a lot. So I think it fits great on the back of the John in any firehouse, and I hope that people will put it there and read it.
Mm-hmm. And how does the book segue or transition or help with departments that are trying to develop a safety culture or trying to bring greater accountability to fireground safety? What lessons can they draw out of the book that might help them with that?
It's a great question. The book is all about empowering others to do the right thing, and that applies absolutely directly to safety. We talked about those 3 values, which include fairness and therefore safety. There's an essay on that in the book. We talked about some of the attitudinal problems and challenges associated with the opposite of a safety culture. Let's call it a culture of cowboyism, or a culture that is insensitive to operating safely, a culture that doesn't care about effective decision making. Well, I've got essays on the challenges of and strategies for making sound decisions. And I've got essays that will give you a taste of why these things matter. And I think that I try to combine lessons from the fire service and law enforcement and healthcare, and with my personal life. I have essays on lessons that I've learned from both of my parents who are no longer with us. So wherever the learning comes from, my aim is to make it personal, to make it relevant, and to make it applicable, and particularly applicable for leaders where their leadership affects and can save other people's lives.
Mm-hmm. And as you have gone in and worked with fire departments, have you how do you help them focus on how to be a safer organization? I'm assuming you see some opportunities when you go in. You had said to me in an email earlier, literally you observe, turnout gear that's pieced together with duct tape and zip ties. And I assume you see some of this. Does this then prompt you to ask some hard questions about what they just may be overlooking as not a big deal? Or I mean, how does this work? How does this non-firefighter come in and help the emperor see he doesn't have any clothes?
Very, very carefully is the answer to that question. First, in order to be effective in any agency, I need to spend time with the members of the organization. So as I come in, I sometimes do an introductory training session that's sort of an orientation, and then turn that into a series of interview sessions, and then spend some time with the shifts and riding along to the greatest extent possible. And as I'm riding along, I know I'm not a firefighter. I never forget that. And it's not my job to do an operations assessment. People don't hire me to do an operations assessment. But what I see as I watch operations are symptoms of leadership issues. And that's what compels me, requires me to raise those questions. So I would raise a question, and you mentioned turnout gear held together with zip ties. That's a real example. I raise that question. I ask, is there a budget issue? And they say no. And what they say is people think it's cool to keep their old turnout gear. It's a mark of experience and macho. I mean, what words would you use? You know what I'm talking about.
No, yeah, I can't exactly think of the word, but yeah, you wear it as almost like a badge of honor that you've had, gear that you could wear out, and now you want to show people you're wearing gear that's worn out. It's odd, but yes, I do see it.
Absolutely. So I raised the question, is this a budget issue? And it never is. Then the question is, as leaders, do you believe that that's okay? Do you think it's okay that people are wearing essentially dangerous turnout gear into an immediately hazardous environment on a regular basis? And they say no. And then I say, well, as a leader, what is keeping us from asserting that standard? So then let's ask the question with that. Is this about SOPs and SOGs? In other words, is this a policy question? Usually not. Is it a training question? Sometimes, but not always. Is it a knowledge question? Do you not realize that stuff is dangerous, shouldn't be in use? And then the question is, if it's not that, is it an accountability issue? And that's when I can say, is this about will or skill? Is this about teaching you better ways to hold people accountable? Or is this about creating an environment where we are going to start changing the way we uphold standards in this department towards safety? I mean, I saw it recently. I was watching a crew respond to an alarm call, and they went in. A couple of the guys went in with their air pack over their shoulder like a college backpack. And I asked the district chief who was in command of the incident. After the incident, I said, hey, I noticed something. I want to ask you about it. And again, I'm not criticizing. I'm asking from a leadership perspective. Did you observe that, and is that okay? And he said, I don't feel like fighting over that. Those guys know what they're doing. And I said, well, did they need the air packs? Well, the answer is we didn't know. And if they needed the air pack, was that a good way to deploy it? I guess not. Well, the interesting question for me is, why weren't the senior chief officers asking their district chief officers those questions? Why weren't, and this may be where some of your captains who express their frustration, we don't want to operate this way, but there's no energy from above to drive that. And some of the benefit of our programs with respect to safety is we get to have those conversations. It's a little bit of a different situation, but I was working with a department that did their call volume was 70% medical, which is not atypical, really, for departments that do medicals.
Yeah.
In their instances, they found that they had paramedics and EMTs and first responders all playing appropriate roles. But what they found were in the middle, a lot of their EMTs were not equally qualified to do the job. And no one was comfortable raising the question about that. So in our sessions, that became one of the issues that we agreed to address over the course of a year. And that became the focus of the challenge. And the same may be true for air management. I'm no air management expert. I'm not a situational awareness expert. You are. But if we see that that's the issue, that there's a lack of sensitivity to those safety factors, then from a leadership perspective, that becomes the focus of what we work on. And that may be the lab, if you will, where we apply what I'm teaching them to solve real problems operationally.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Now, recently, it's been a couple of years, maybe, you and I had a really neat opportunity that a fire department wanted to have, for lack of a better word, a checkup. They wanted to know. They wanted to bring someone in from the outside to independently look at their leadership and their operations. And you and I teamed up on that, and we went into the organization and we conducted countless hours of interviews of members and had group sessions. And you looked at the organization from the perspective of leadership, and I looked at the organization from the perspective of operations, and I was very pleased with the outcome of how those two perspectives, even though we're sitting with the same group asking the same questions at the same time, but from two different lenses, how we were able to marry up the assessment and make some observations and some recommendations back to the chief of the organization that I think was very valuable, in that he was concerned that if they were missing the mark, that they might be so close to their issues that they wouldn't see it. Or that there might be people in the organization who wouldn't necessarily speak up through the administration, but they might speak up to an outsider where there would be confidentiality. And I give a lot of credit to this particular organization because it takes a great deal of humility and a very balanced ego to open your doors up to folks from the outside, like we were, and say, sniff around, ask all the questions you want, and find everything wrong about our organization that we need to change or make better. And how powerful of a leadership message it was for this chief to do this. And he stayed completely out of the way, did not mingle in when we met with the crews at the various stations. He was not present. And I think I could say with reasonable assurance that even what was said in those rooms, very little of it ever made its way back to him. But then what we did is we prepared a report back to him sharing what we had observed. And I think that ended up being a pretty valuable document for them.
I hope so. I believe that it was. And as I spoke with members of that organization afterwards, the chief led a series of changes based on our recommendation, which is very, very heartening, When I was in the corporate world, some of my work resulted in a new coating for an automotive exhaust system and a line of diapers that are 1/16 of 1 penny less expensive to manufacture. You know what? I don't want that on my tombstone. But if I can have on my tombstone, we helped a fire chief to create a more effective, safer, more responsive organization. That is something that I can be very, very proud of. And I think it was wonderful to work together on that. It was a great example of looking at something from different perspectives and finding real commonalities and also finding some differences that were interesting and important. And I think you're right. It was a testament to the courage and clarity of that fire chief and his command staff to invite us in to do that work. And very gratifying to know that it resulted in improvements.
Yeah, I agree completely. Okay, Chad, our time is drawing short, but I do want to give you the opportunity to share what other benefits there might be from the work that you do as it relates to bringing together safety and leadership.
Thank you. First, as I said, very often, as I work with agencies, we work to solve problems together. And some of those problems are often operational and safety related deficits or challenges. So there's a potential direct benefit in that if you, for example, have the prescription, I can oversee the leadership process of implementing the cure. So there's a direct benefit. Maybe more importantly, though, there is an important dynamic that takes place when people have real conversations together. The work that I do brings together leadership teams to have real conversations over a period of time. By doing that, they develop a common language of leadership, and through greater familiarity and through problem solving, they develop a higher level of trust. And in that environment, first of all, people can call each other on their problems more effectively so you can solve safety problems as they arise. Second, people get more creative and more open because they know each other better and they're more willing to take risks. And so again, safety benefits because you have a team of leaders who are willing to take risks and look for ways to get better over time. And then finally, third, they develop this common leadership language so that they trust one another, but they also speak to one another more efficiently and effectively so that that terse, highly intermediated conversation on the fireground, the command conversation or the information sharing or the quick report, all become more effective because these people know one another better and because they're all speaking the same language as a primary instinct.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. Well, thank you for spending some time with me this afternoon, for coming over to my house, and that's really cool. This might be the first podcast I've actually recorded live at my house, so I'll throw up a picture on the show notes of you and I sitting here in my dining room. So for those who want to see what my dining room looks like, you can go to samatters.com/37 and see the show notes for this episode. And of course, the show notes are there for every episode at samatters.com/whatever episode that you're listening to. There are show notes with more detail and pictures and links and contact information for our guests. So, speaking of contact information, Chad, we can't get out of here without giving you an opportunity to talk about your website and how somebody might contact you if they're interested in having you come in and do some work with them.
Why, thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity to spend this time with you and your listeners. It's been such a pleasure.
Good.
The best way to reach me is through our website, which is www.ethinact.com. It's a contraction of Ethical Leaders in Action, ethinact.com. There you'll find a link to a description of the book we described, a blog that I post. Let's say my New Year's resolution is every 2 weeks in 2015, and other free resources that describe this perspective on ethical leadership. And if at any time I can be of service to any of your listeners, one of the great benefits of self-employment is I do not have a taximeter on my back. I would be more than happy to be a resource to anyone. You can also link to me on Twitter at Chad Weinstein, the same spelling.
Okay. Very good. Thanks for being with me today, Chad.
Thank you.
Well, that's it. Episode 37 is complete. Thank you to Dr. Chad Weinstein from Ethical Leaders in Action for taking some time from your busy schedule to talk with me today in my home and share your thoughts about how fire departments can achieve extraordinary results and improve safety. Thank you to the listeners for sharing some of your valuable time with me today. I sincerely appreciate your support of the SA Matters mission. If you've experienced or witnessed a near miss or close call and would like to be interviewed on this show, please visit samatters.com and click on the Contact Us link. And thank you in advance for sharing your lessons learned so that others may live. If you like the show, please go to iTunes or Stitcher Radio and search for SA Matters Radio, SA Matters Radio, and subscribe to the podcast and leave your feedback. If you like the show, I'd really appreciate you giving it a 5-star review as well. Not only will this motivate me to work harder for you, but it'll also help others find the show. If you've been inspired and want to learn more about situational awareness, consider becoming part of the SA Matters community. It's free, and when you sign up, you receive the special report I spoke of earlier, 25 Best Practices for Improving First Responder Safety. To claim your free gift, head over to samatters.com and click on the red box on the right side of the homepage. Be safe out there, and may the peace of the Lord and strong situational awareness be with you always.
You've been listening to the Situational Awareness Matters radio show with Dr. Richard B. Gassaway. If you are interested in learning more about situational awareness, human factors, and decision-making under stress, visit samatters.com. If you are interested in booking Dr. Gassaway for an upcoming event, visit his personal website at richgassaway.com.